Okay, I'm gonna go for it. So thank you. There's been a lot of technical hula hoops just to make sure I I participate in this conversation. I am in currently Nigeria, and power just went out because it's raining, but we're gonna get through this. So yes, good afternoon. My name is Azubike. People call me Zuby. And I'm the co-founder of FutureBreed, which is a digital technology consultancy for small to mid-sized firms, helping them leverage computational methodologies to help them expand their business and design capabilities. A lot of the people I work with typically either not at this event or they're at this event and they've heard, a bunch of, futuristic outlooks and they don't know where to start. Or they kind of get a sense of where they want to start, but they don't have who to help them with. So that's kind of where I fit in. I also help an AIA Detroit on the subcommittee Code D that just helps to educate people on computational design. And for 5 years, I've been teaching at LTU. And for 10 years, I worked at Inform Studio. I left a year and a half ago to start FutureBreed, and I was the director of digital technology. So I've been very, depending on how you look at the conversations so far that I've been able to catch here and there, I've unfortunately or fortunately contributed. I've been on some interesting projects and I've contributed to some of the carbon situations that our industry is responsible for. But as I moved from projects, these are some of the examples of projects I've worked on, small scale projects, and a lot of this presentation will make sense to larger companies, but I think it's typically, I would say catered to small to mid-sized firms, not necessarily, but just because these firms come to events like this and they don't necessarily have any tangible thing per se to take home, because some of the things are too large scale for them to make sense of. But so I moved from projects and then got interested in the process. How do you make things, the processes efficient enough, effective enough so that the people are smarter? And then I eventually got into like, okay, so if you're walking this way, how does it impact the business, right? And there's one major question that really hit me is, what does it mean to be a computational designer from a business perspective? You can work on cool projects, you can work on interesting processes, but what does it mean from a business standpoint? And that really got me thinking about my future, about the future of industry. I can't see any of you, but this was meant to be a question in person, but I'm sure you resonate with this in that you've built tools that people didn't use. I'm sure there are people in there that are like, yeah, I've had that experience. And that was what led me to that question. Because if I'm spending my time developing fancy scripts, plugins, and it doesn't get deployed, that seems like a waste of company dollars and time, as far as I'm concerned. So I saw this quote by Dustin Schaefer. He's the CTO at Henderson, and he's like, really useful software is just a manifestation of a beautiful underlying process. The genius is that someone figured out, sorry, the genius is someone figured out an elegant way to solve a problem, and then they built a product to deliver that solution. Software doesn't fix a bad process. And many things in this statement hit me. And I'll hopefully like go through them real quick, just given the time that we have. But a lot of the things we do as computational designers, technologists, it's really about process innovation. You are taking something that exists or maybe doesn't exist, but there's an outcome anyway that you're trying to solve for. And how you get from point A to point B, it's either incremental progress to get there, or it's a disruptive progress to get there. And as you formulate these processes, it ends up leading to what I think of as products, right? We tend to think of products as things that are on the market, or maybe it's packaged nicely in this, in an application standpoint. But I believe a product is just a way to deliver that functionality, right? It's wrapped in a way that it's useful. It's the embodiment of the process. But the interesting thing is a product eventually still goes back to then inform the process. And so this idea of product and productizing is very important. But the unfortunate thing, and hence the title of this, the missing role, is, I think Toby said it, where there's a fixation on the algorithm sometimes. And I feel like computational designers, we tend to think of ourselves more from a software development standpoint. There's a focus on building the thing right, technology first. It's like everyone's trying to figure out like, oh, how do I apply AI, right? It's where can I use AI? The idea is the problem, or rather the technology is what's driving what we do. I think we should probably start thinking as product managers as well. What does that mean? It's focusing on building the right thing, right? So it's a problem first mindset. Because for some of the problems that many of you have, AI might not be the solution, or because you're not focused on the problem, you're not necessarily deploying AI in a meaningful way to address that problem. And so when you think about process, spending time in the problem space, I think is very critical. So this, again, this presentation is more about starting this conversation about, when things are not used, the idea of making sure that we are building the right thing, right? So there's not a huge example of project specific use cases of computation. That's not what this presentation is about. I think there will be tons of that, I'm sure, as we've seen in the course of this symposium. But I'm just addressing this issue of how do you even build the right thing? So the right thing considers factors like the business. All right. So you're either increasing revenue or reducing expense. So how are the things you're doing? Have you factored how they're doing that, these two things, either increasing profitability in either of these two ways? There's also, like, with product, I'm glad I'm on a panel with, I think, one product manager. So I'm interested in, am I saying a whole lot of garbage? Or is this something that we can maybe have further discussion on? But when you think of go-to-market, like, what's the right way to approach the people who are using your tools? Like, is this a plugin? Is this a script? Like, how do you go-to-market is more than that, obviously from a product standpoint, but it's how do you reach the people that you intend to deliver this value to? The other thing is social, right? Do you have a community of people? Do you have a user base, or are you developing things hoping for a user base? Have you been able to build a community around said problem where you can validate that, yeah, this is actually a problem people have? Have you taken into account emotions, like, how one person responds to your solution might differ, right? So how are you taking into account not just the financial aspect, or the cultural aspect of the organization, but even more the individual approach to how they use your software. But the one we focus on is the technical, which is critical. You want to build the thing, right, but just building it right alone is not enough. So I'm just going to highlight like two superpowers of like product manager. I think it's prioritization and influence. And when I think of prioritization, I think there's several things to really think about. Is just this maniacal understanding of the user within the context of the process. Like, it's not just like a base understanding of, oh, they didn't do this, but you want to understand why and at what point in the process. And I'll show you, I'll cover like, okay, this is how I've done it, how I do it. And then it needs to be connected to business outcomes. Like, you can't just build something because it's cool. Again, it needs to be a contributor to the organization's growth. And as far as like the outcomes, just need to weigh resources, but there needs to be an understanding of it's not always immediate. How do you sometimes it happens over time, and you have to have a clear understanding of when that time is. But say, oh, I'm going to do this now for it to lead to some type of impact. It's almost like AI. The resources that go into AI now is for a future, benefit. And you can't just say, oh, I don't see the impact of AI now, so I'm not going to do things that I need to do because I don't see that impact. So there's something there that we need to wrestle with when we're developing tools, and understanding what is the opportunity cost, right? If I'm not doing this thing, what else could I be doing? You want to have that mindset so that when you're prioritizing, you know what you're giving up for this thing you're doing. And it should fit within the context of your, roadmap. A lot of, firms, and I say this carefully, it's just based on, it's almost like whack-a-mole. Like, oh, let's do this. Oh, let's do that. Oh, this new thing came out. Let's try this. There is no guiding, structure for how you're even pursuing some of the tools that you're deciding to develop. The other thing is influence. So you've prioritized influence. How do you then get people that, buy in? How do you get people to use this thing when it's developed? Well, you want to initiate and encourage like group conversations, whether offline, online. It's about its culture. It's culture. It's not just technology is on one hand, but the adoption is another thing, right? So just examples, you can do one-on-one, leadership with the leadership group, have company-wide updates. Sure, many of you are actually maybe doing this, but I know this is something that many other firms don't do. And then you also want to, influence with data. You want to understand like what people are saying, what you're hearing. You want to understand the sentiments and meet them where they are. You also want to understand what they're doing. Are you measuring like their usage? What's the impact on the business outcomes again? Like, those things start to help you influence people, because the thing about product management is you don't own. People say, oh, product management is like you're the mini CEO, but you don't own anything. You lead by influencing. And so being able to, have the soft skill and both the data side is critical for you to not have things you build not used. And so there are two approaches. There's a top-down approach to being effective in these two things, and there's a bottom-up approach. The first thing, like, I recommend is a lot of firms have checklists, what things need to be done. And so you strike it off when they're done. But I think you need to start having process maps. And a process map is the how you get those things done, and then understanding the relationships between them. So this is an example of one I did with a client, helping them map out where the decision points, who's responsible for what. The who doesn't necessarily show up here, but it actually captures each step. We need to do this before it goes to review, and then it gets approved. That way you can understand all the interrelated parts that go into developing maybe a subset of this process, or rethinking the whole process. So Just to run through this quick, process audit. You need to identify your pain points within that process. And then when you capture all those, different processes, sub processes, you need to have them embedded in like a collaborative platform. This is where I use Trello. And then that way people are able to not just capture the pain points, but you can start getting information on sentiments. You can start understanding like where are the opportunities relative to what people are saying, but even having some way to understand how those business outcomes pair with some of these captured tasks. And then you're able to show it, in some type of chart. Some of the charts here are showing like people are doing redlining breakdown, right? So you want to understand, if I'm building these tools, how are they affecting how much time people are spending redlining? Well, now you get a sense of the impact this thing is having. Is it actually having impact? Is it not? Breezing through this because I have like 1 minute left. But this is just to give you an idea of how this might play out from a bottom-up approach, is having people capture their ideas. You have a way of, you know, getting people involved in the process. And then you have leadership going in to evaluate some of these things. And then you have the strategic goals, the impact, the effort. You're able to attach these metrics to what people have put in. That way you're buying in and you're getting people in, showing them what that looks like, and even giving some recognition. So I think what I'm trying to say is, in a nutshell, is not just focusing on building the thing right, but building the right thing and having people as part of that process. So thank you. I know I can't hear, but thank you very much.